Hi, Steve.
Howdy.
Hey, Steve.
Hi, Steve.
Ah. I can hear you, but I can't see you. Oh, you're waving at me. Madam President. Hello, Nishad.
Howdy, Councilmember Porter. Director.
Or something, yeah. I can never keep it straight. But for you, you can just call me Steve.
Thank you.
Okay, Madam President, we're ready to begin.
Looks like we have a quorum. Okay, I'd like to call to order the Sugar Land Development Corporation meeting for Tuesday, February the 2nd, 2021. City Secretary, do we have any public comment
No, ma'am, we don't.
at this time? Okay, we're going to move to item 4 minutes. Consideration of an action on the minutes of the January 5th, 2021 meeting.
Move to approve.
Do I have a second?
Second.
Okay, motion by Director Porter and second by Director Jacobson. All in favor, say aye or
Aye.
raise your hand. Okay, motion carries. Item 5, resolution, consideration and action on Sugar Land Development Corporation Resolution Number 2021-0201, a resolution of the Sugar Land Development Corporation approving project funding for the construction of the Owens Road Project, CST 2003, located within the city of Sugar Land. And we have Keisha Seals, Engineering Manager, for the presentation. Keisha?
Good afternoon, Madam Chair and members of the board. I am going to step through this very briefly because most of you know the history of this project. But in 2011, you know that the Central Unit Prison property closed, and there was an environmental assessment done in 2014. In 2015, we had a feasibility study done to determine the layout and the plan and whether that site could be used. In 2016, we purchased the Central Unit property. And then in 2017, Fort Bend County Mobility Bond included the Owens Road. There was also a regional drainage feasibility study done, and then we did an abatement and demolition on the site. In 2018, SLDC allocated funds for site planning and construction. And then in 2019, the PER, which included the intersection of the design of the intersection of Owens Road and US 90A began. And then around that same time, later on in 2019, Atlas 14 drainage criteria was adopted. In 2020 of last year, Fort Bend County allocated additional funds to the Owens Road project. The PER wrapped up, and then the intersection design improvements commenced. Next slide, please. Here's a breakdown of the priorities that were allocated for the site planning at that time in 2018. The drainage and modeling, the initial portion of it was completed, the 400,000. The environmental remediation was completed. As you know, the Owens Road PER planning is ongoing, and then the contingencies, of course, were utilized and used up. Next slide, please. So the original drainage for the Owens Road was based on the previous drainage criteria, and then after the roadway PER began, the Atlas 14 criteria was adopted. So additional funds are needed for the revised drainage design. The design will include also the casing of the water and wastewater under US 90A and UPR, which was not a part of the original design. The funds that we're requesting will also be allocated to TxDOT's requirement for an environmental assessment at US 90A in Owens Road, which we were not originally informed of, and then associated costs for the TxDOT design review, as well as Union Pacific's design review for the project. Next slide, please. Here's just a layout of the Owens Road, the proposed Owens Road. To the west, the very far west of the plan, or I would say to the very left of the plan, is the tie-in between Fort Bend County and the city's city limits. And then the Owens Road goes from the west to the east, which would be to the prison unit property, as well as adjacent to the airport property. Then it ties down south to US 90A, and then a portion of it will go north to tie into the public safety training facility and the remaining portions of the prison property. Next slide, please. So the budget amendment was approved by the board back in January of 2021. We requested or are requesting the SLDC funding resolution to be approved this evening. We will anticipate awarding the design contract for the project next month in March. And then I'm anticipating that construction will commence in spring of 2022. And that's assuming that we have all our permitting requirements approved and in our hands from UPR and TxDOT. Next slide, please. Currently, we have about $3.47 million allocated to the project. We have $150,000 already in the budget, and then $3.32 million allocated for FY22 for construction. Next slide. Thank you. So staff is asking for your consideration and action on resolution number 2021-0201, authorizing funding in the amount of $670,000 for services associated with the drainage and infrastructure design for Owens Road, CIP project number CST 2003. And with that, I'll entertain any questions you may have.
Are there any questions from the directors?
I have a question, or just, yeah. Keisha, can you go back, or ask them to go back to the chronological slide?
Slide number, yes. The project background?
The one that had all the dates.
Project background.
Yeah.
Right there.
There you go. You know, the one thing that I think we probably ought to keep in this project is why we're doing this road in the first place. We hired a firm, and they did a feasibility study for our business park and said it's not feasible unless we have another way to get in or out. So that's why we're doing all this, so that we can have a feasible business park. So I think carrying that information is important. That's just my feedback on this background, why we're doing what we're doing. I know once they tell you to go do it, you're going to get it done. So I'm not worried about that.
Thank you.
I'd be glad to make a motion to approve the funding request as laid out by our able engineer manager.
Okay.
Second.
Okay, I have a motion by Director Porter. Do I have a second?
Molly. I have a question though, please.
Okay, you have a question?
Yes. Keisha, remind me, the total cost, we're in for about 3.7, but the total cost, well, how much is the county in for all in?
So the total estimated project cost for construction is $14.4 million. With both the 2017 and 2020 funds allocated from the county is putting in $13.3 million, which means they're in it for about 92% of the project. And Councilman Porter brought up a great, portion in the terms of, it's very important for our business park. However, this road is also very important to the county because the county also needs additional access from 1464 to alleviate the congestion at US 99. So they saw that and they recognized that they could not alleviate that section for themselves without this connection. And so they put in the additional funds last year to help us get to that point.
Thank you.
Okay, question, Director Cutchin?
Thank you. Yes, now, as you mentioned, the Fort Bend County Mobility Fund authorized funds back in 2017. Is there like a 5-year deadline or some sort of a time frame in which we have to use those funds or else they disappear?
That's a good question. So at the time that we received the 2017 mobility bonds, that was the case. However, since we've been negotiating with the county, they're just not pressing that because they do realize that there are other things involved in getting this roadway done. And again, they need this roadway done as well. So we are working with them continuously. Actually, I'm setting up a meeting with them within the next couple of weeks to talk about it. So that won't be an issue for us to move the project forward.
Okay, great. Just wanted to make sure we weren't going to be up against some clock on some part of the funding in a year. Okay, thank you.
Okay, are there any more questions from the board? Okay, I had a motion by Porter and I had do I have a second? I have a second by Kermali. Okay, all in favor, raise your hand or vote and say aye.
Aye.
Okay, any opposed? No. Okay, motion carries. Okay, moving on to item 6, annual report. Review and discussion of the fiscal year 2020 annual report. Elizabeth Huff, Director of Economic Development.
Good afternoon. All right, perfect. Next slide, please. Okay, so this year you're going to find a little bit of different content on the annual report as we really wanted to tell the story of what happened with the pandemic this year and how the Office of Economic Development responded. As you all know, that COVID-19 pandemic affected our businesses greatly, and we did extensive survey with them and found that one of their top concerns was revenue and cash flow, and then reopening with proper precautions. Next slide. So our COVID-19 response was critical to supporting the business community in these trying times. Next slide. Economic Development implemented its business response plan, which involved much communication with the business community, data gathering, and birth of the All In for SLTX campaign and initiative. As for communication, we upgraded our email to a branded newsletter that grew distribution from 100 to 1,000 and hosted an economic outlook for Sugar Land with Greater Houston Partnerships Chief Economist Patrick Jankowski. And as I mentioned, we had extensive research and outreach. Next slide. The Sweet Cash program was implemented as part of the All In for SLTX business recovery effort to inject needed cash flow into this local small businesses impacted by the COVID-19 pandemic. In December 2020, we concluded the holiday-themed 'Tis the Season Sweet Cash program, committing our remaining gift card inventory. The program ended with an impressive impact of more than $206,000 into the Sugar Land economy, which exceeded our goal of $200,000. And we distributed over 4,000 gift cards to frontline workers and consumers. 140 Sugar Land businesses benefited from the program. In October of 2020, Economic Development, TEDC, Texas Economic Development Council, recognized Sugar Land Sweet Cash program with the 2020 CETA Award for Exemplary Achievement and Innovativeness. Next slide, please. The Office of Economic Development coordinated constantly with the business community to help find PPE, childcare resources, and best practices for conducting business. We have noted some of these stories with Helix and Pink Zebra in the report on page 15. Next slide. We also joined the city in celebrating Healthcare Heroes Week. Many Sweet Cash gift cards were given to hospital frontline workers to support and recognize their hard work in these trying times. Next slide. Now on to business development. The city incentivized a project from Western Development Corporation with a total capital investment of $20.8 million. Development is currently underway on a 2-building warehouse distribution center totaling over 300,000 square feet in the business park. The Credo Packaging's Phase 3 expansion was also completed in fiscal year 20, adding 200,000 square feet of manufacturing and warehouse space to the business park as well. Economic development continued business recruitment efforts by attending events before the COVID-19 pandemic. These included the Site Selectors Guild Fall Forum, Outbound Missions with Texas One, and GHP and the Economic Site Selector Conference. This page features our commercial property inventory at the end of fiscal year 20. Our industrial sector continues to perform well. Our office vacancy is slowly increasing, and we do not expect to see COVID impacts to office and retail until the second or third quarter of 2021. Next slide. Our notable projects are featured on this page. Staff supported the development process for Amazon's last mile delivery station building in their building that totaled over 300,000 square feet. Detactichem moved their 30 employees into 25,000 square feet facility on Industrial Boulevard. Staff worked with Fort Bend County to ensure the ditches around the area were cleaned and continued to deliver business retention services to Detactichem. And then finally, staff is maintaining communication with Sistel USA to monitor the progress of its 20,000 square foot manufacturing and office space expansion in the business park, after assisting with the abandonment of unneeded roadway to pave the way for their expansion. Next slide. As for incentives, in FY20, the city had 4 active tax abatement agreements and proceeded with terminating our agreement that had not met performance measurements. The active tax abatement agreements continue to exceed the minimum required value and have resulted in over $18 million in inventory values that are not subject to abatement exemptions, which is exceeding the requirements by $12 million. Staff entered into 1 tax abatement agreement in FY20 that became active in FY22 with Transwestern. Direct Incentive Program has 6 active agreements in FY20 and continues to be a successful program for the city, in total bringing 5,455 new jobs and $488 million in new capital investment and more than $2.4 million in taxable purchases. Next slide. Economic development is in the process of updating its 2011 through 2016 strategic plan. As of 2 weeks ago, we released our RFP for a workforce and targeted industry analysis, and have received those RFPs and are in the process of reviewing them and hope to be conducting interviews with those firms in the next few weeks. Next slide. And then finally, as you know, we had a budget of about $7.1 million approved for FY21 economic development activities. And our priorities include, first, redevelopment and interim activations and long-term planning. 2, implementation of the economic development integrated marketing program. 3, expansion of public art program into creative and non-traditional formats. 4, continued enhancement of small business engagement. And 5, expand department innovativeness by refining and creating policies to increase effectiveness. Next slide. And that is all I've got on the annual report, and I'll answer any questions if you have any.
Do we have any questions from the directors on the board? We do not. Okay, thank you so much, Elizabeth, for a fantastic report. Okay, moving on to item 7, director's report. Marketing, promotions, and events, strategic and capital projects, business recruitment and retention efforts. Elizabeth Huff, Director of Economic Development.
Good afternoon. Hey, I just have one quick update for y'all. We are deep in the process with DCI of conducting what we call our immersion tour, and have had really great success with meeting with the Economic Development Committee and then lots of business leaders and our partners throughout the community, and are gathering some really great intel. Our next step is to then take that information and start building some lifestyle pieces and building relationships so that we can start publicizing Sugarland and out in the news and hopefully garner some national attention. We'll also be working with DCI on some SEO optimization and website analytics and social media, increasing our social media presence. So just wanted to give you a quick update, let you know that we are working really hard behind the scenes with DCI on the contract that y'all approved at the very beginning of this year. And we're really excited to see what comes next. So with that, I think Chairman, you've got can entertain a motion for adjournment.
Okay, any other questions from the directors of the board? Okay, well, with that, I'd like to make a motion to adjourn. Or do I have a motion to adjourn? Okay, thank you, Carol. Thank you, Director McCutcheon. Do you have a second? Do I need one? Okay. Okay, thank you. That concludes our meeting for today.
Thank you.
Well done.